If you ever want to be terrified about the future, first look around. Second, go to the YouTube page for Boston Dynamics. I'm assuming they have a YouTube page, or just go on YouTube and type in Boston Dynamics robots and see some of the advancements in their technology in terms of movement and how these things operate with the world within the world around them. And you'll be horrified and deeply frightened to your core. So the idea of rogue AI has been done in movies before. This movie kind of couples the whole rogue AI concept with robotics. Again, a subject that has been tackled in films prior. And let's talk about M3GAN. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Before we get started, click on the red subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you'll know whenever I post something on these here internets. Okay, so I really, really liked M3GAN, but I didn't love it. This movie is essentially a PG-13 horror comedy produced by Blumhouse, which has made some huge hits in its past. I loved Get Out to a certain extent. I had some issues with the message of that film, but I liked Get Out a lot in spite of all the hype surrounding it. And I liked The Hunt, and they've made some trash. They made a craft movie that wasn't very good. They did the movie You Should Have Left, which is just god-awful hot trash, and you should never watch it. It's like the most embarrassing thing Kevin Bacon has ever done. And, but they've made some really good movies. They did the great, great, great remake of Halloween, / I guess that's a sequel of Halloween, but that movie is great. They made two really bad sequels to that movie with Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. But overall, I like the work Blumhouse does. They're not afraid to take chances. They're not afraid to do what they want to do. They like to take some, classic horror ideas and kind of twist them on their heads. And the issue with M3GAN is it doesn't do any of that. There's nothing here that's surprising. The movie is funny and engaging and has kind of a cool, relatively unique story and concept. A girl named Jenna lives in Seattle, works for a big, huge toy company that makes basically Furbies, except in 2022. And she has this cool idea for this female robot companion that helps deal with really deep issues a child who experiences grief, and that is kind of pushed to the forefront when that happens with her. And her sister dies in a car accident, and she has to take over stewardship of her niece. And so that's kind of the basics of the movie. And of course, things go awry when M3GAN turns out to be an AI robot that can learn and is programmed to do specific tasks. And so things get weird and crazy, and people die, and that's the movie. It's funny. It's self-aware. Here's the issues I have with it. It is Viola McGraw plays Katie, who's the young girl, and she's just not a very good actress. There's just no way around that. She's just kind of there to fill in her part in the story, and is just doesn't give a very good performance. She feels kind of phoned in, and that's fine. Child actors can be very hit or miss. And she exists for the purpose of this movie. And that's basically it. It also leaves some plot threads kind of undone. It introduces one involving one of the programmers. It's played for laughs for one scene and then completely discarded and not relevant for the rest of the movie. And that's kind of strange. A lot of the characters here are very stereotype. The douchey tech boss is present and does his douchey tech boss thing. And I think the biggest qualm I have with the movie is it just doesn't go quite all the way. Blumhouse is known for being courageous and diving in head first. And despite what the director and the writers saying about and the producers saying about how they were okay with this movie being PG-13, this movie feels like it's desperately trying to be PG-13 when it could have leaned into the horror and the gore a little bit more for my taste. And I'm not I don't like torture porn. I hate that genre. I don't like insane buckets of blood for the most part in my movies. But this movie seems to be holding something back. And I think they really could have made this into a classic if they had leaned a little bit more into the darker aspects of the movie. and they just don't. And I don't really understand why. Maybe they did want to reach a broader audience now that people are actually going back into theaters and not everything is available on digital day one. But that's the impression I got, is that they were holding something back. And I guess the best comparison I could make for this movie is the Child's Play remake from a few years ago, which if that movie had not starred Chucky and it had been called something else, and Karen and Andy Barclay had not been the main characters, I think that movie would have been more successful. But I actually really, really like the Child's Play remake. It's got that darker tone mixed with humor. Is that a better movie than this? I don't know. I can't say. It has better performances, especially from its young lead actor. But apples to oranges, they're not the same comparison. This movie is like a massive hit, and I think that's cool for Blumhouse. It's kind of weird that it's this movie because they've made better films. They've made worse films, but they've made better films than this. So I'm not going to say I'm disappointed with M3GAN. It met my expectations, but it certainly didn't exceed them. I laughed when I was supposed to laugh, and it's fine. It's a little predictable. It introduces pieces of technology and characters where you immediately look at them and say, oh yeah, I know exactly where this is going to play in the beginning of the movie, the end of the movie, the middle of the movie. I know exactly what set piece is going to show up at the end of the film based on the introduction of a character or a piece of tech. And that's kind of disappointing. The movie's just really, really predictable. And nothing about this movie surprised me from the first frame to the last. So M3GAN is fine. It's a good movie. If you like these types of movies, it'll probably be in your wheelhouse. Thanks so much for checking out the video. Let me know if you liked it. If it was helpful, consider subscribing. You can also like and share it. That tells the algorithm that it's worth promoting. And then let me know in the comments, is this movie way better than I'm giving it credit for? Is my opinion wrong? That's fine. Tell me. And I'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m.